from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. It's Teaching Social Emotional Learning Through Music, a practical web series for all music educators, embedding SEL into music education. On this episode, we welcome music educators and SEL musicians, Narwhals and Waterfalls. Please welcome our host of Teaching Social Emotional Learning Through Music, Scott Edgar.
Hi everybody, Scott Edgar here. We are in for a treat. In this episode of Teaching Social and Emotional Learning Through Music, we realized the insane irony that how many episodes have we had, and we haven't had music making on this series. Well, we're going to change that today. We are all searching for just the perfect musical way to connect with our students through social and emotional learning. We're looking for tunes, we're looking for songs, we're looking for music, because we know that it's got to start with the music. Music's gonna be the portal that's gonna connect to our students. Music is going to have the conversation starter that we all need to delve into some of the challenges that we're dealing with today. And folks, we are in for such a treat because we have the gift of having two phenomenal musicians who have created so many fabulous resources. So we are going to welcome Paige and Adrien from Narwhals and Waterfalls today. And we're going to explore their music. They're going to sing for us, and we're going to hear the tunes. We're going to see these resources, and we're going to explore exactly what social and emotional learning means to them. Paige and Adrien, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, our honor. You know, because I think there are a lot of general music teachers out there who are saying, you know, we want to have these conversations with our littlest of students, and they don't know how to have that conversation starter. They don't know what tunes to pick. Well, you've made our job easy. You've written the tunes. You've written the music that's going to allow us to engage with some of these challenges, but also to explore those three key pillars of identity, belonging, and agency of social and emotional learning. But before we get to that, friends, can we just talk a little bit about where you've come from and what's been your motivation to explore social and emotional learning through music? Paige, can we start with you?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on my career. For the past 7 years, I've been a K through fifth grade music teacher at a large public school in Dallas, Texas. I was really into teaching modern band instruments like ukulele and guitar. I loved encouraging improvisation and creativity and artful singing, and really like instilling the value of creativity into the students. And SEL has kind of came into my world about 3 to 4 years into teaching. When I decided to go to this professional development over the summer, and they talked about how amazing the relationships could be with your students and how that could really impact the engagement and the learning in the classroom. And so that's when I really started to research social emotional learning. And what I did was I got really excited and went back to my classroom and started searching on YouTube social emotional learning songs. And I found little to nothing. I found a couple of really good ones on Sesame Street, but there wasn't anything that was practical for use in the music classroom. And so, you know, because one of my values is creativity, I decided to, you know, use my own creativity and write songs for my classroom, which I think a lot of music teachers do anyway. Like, I think if you walked into any music teacher's classroom right now, they would have songs that they made up themselves. And so I feel like this is something that, you know, if teachers really are, you know, look into their creativity, they could write the songs. But I wanted to go ahead and create and get the songs out there for other teachers to be able to use. So that's kind of where it all started for me.
Paige, beautiful. And yeah, I think one of the most powerful things you just said was about the relationships. That was the hook. And we know that if we're going to get anywhere with our students, that we need to have that caring relationship between teacher and student. You brought
Yeah.
up Sesame Street. 50 years ago, Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street were talking about social and emotional learning. They weren't calling it SEL. They were just calling it what we do, kindness. But they've explored, and they've set such a strong foundation for us to explore. And here, for our listeners, they're going to be singing some of these songs today. So we're in for such a treat. And we're going to explore exactly how Paige's creativity and Adrien's creativity starts to manifest in their own tunes and in their own classrooms. Paige, I want to just kind of dig a little deeper here, because I actually think that some teachers may be feeling a little inadequate about writing their own songs. That's not as common of a practice as I think we would want it to be in our profession. So for the teacher who says, I'm not a composer, I'm not a songwriter, this isn't something that I do, that's not my background, what advice would you give to them?
Well, first I would tell them to think about the advice they would give to their own students. And the advice that they would probably give is to try it. Because if you don't try, then you're bound to fail. And so, why not give it a shot? And also, if you write songs for your students, it can light you up. Like, I think creativity really lights you up, and it's not only for yourself but for your students. And you're setting a good example. I think one place I would start is taking like a classic folk song and writing your own words to it. So there's already a melody there, and you're just inputting your own lyrics. So that seems like it would be a good place to start. I'm a big fan of writing parodies, and that's actually where I start with my students when they're composing. Is I get them to choose a song that they already know and just create their own lyrics.
Paige, it's perfect and a great entry point. We hear students going down the halls and singing alternate lyrics to tunes that they're doing. They
Yes.
want to do this. They're doing this already. And it's the definition of being culturally relevant. We're taking a tune and the words, the text, we are absolutely mapping it onto exactly where our students are. Great advice, great thoughts there, Paige. Adrien, what about you? Where did you discover SEL?
It's very similar to what you said about Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street, where I was exposed to it way before I had the term for it. My first actual summer job, I worked a summer at McDonald's, and that convinced me to get a different job the next summer. And that job was at a summer camp where, besides leading the whole camp in music myself, I also got to see there were three cabins, three boys' cabins, three girls' cabins. And you could see some of them, using some kind of rhyme, some kind of chant to get their kids to do this and move that way. And I saw a lot of the foundation of what I would later end up seeing was SEL. And so I started to observe it then, use it in my own cabins. And then after that, I worked at a daycare. And obviously, if you work in a daycare, you get to see a lot of just little hummed rhythms. I actually worked for 2 years in a classroom as the assistant of the same woman who was my babysitter when I was young. And so she had decades of little rhymes and songs and stuff that she would use to get the 2-year-olds to go to sleep, to wake up, to transition. And then beyond that, I worked my wife and I moved to Japan right after we got married. And I taught a couple of mommy and me classes where head, shoulders, knees, and toes is not just fun for moving as a little kid. For a Japanese kid who's also learning English, it was, two-sided there. And then finally moved to Dallas here, and that's where I met Paige as well. And for the first 3 years I was here, I was teaching full-time in daycares around Dallas. And during that time, also got to see, basically, I would enter different classrooms and you'd see this one teacher who did certain things and their students responded a certain way. And you go, that's interesting. I don't know if I would repeat that. Didn't quite get what I wanted. But then you go next door and you'd see, it's to this day, that stands out as one of the coolest memories ever. It was a class full of 2.5 to 3-year-olds who I walked in to start music class, and they were all sitting cross-legged in complete silence, focusing on their breath. And she kind of like waved me in and was like, "Shh, go ahead and sit down." And they saw me. They didn't jump up and go crazy. They sat. I sat down. We sat for another minute or so. And after that, she said, "Okay, and now it's music time." And they sat up, they smiled, and we just went from there. And so that experience all the way back to that first summer at camp, I had all the breadcrumbs leading up to SEL and observing teachers. My own mother was a teacher, and so I got to see a lot of the tools and techniques that they use throughout that. And yeah, that's how one day down the road is like, oh, that's called SEL. That's why they're good teachers, and that's why their students responded to them that way.
Absolutely. And I think that's the journey that so many people are on, because SEL has just skyrocketed in this last year, right? And so many teachers are saying, well, this sounds kind of like what I've done, and I'm lacking the vocabulary. I'm lacking the construct. And when we start to name it and explore it, that gives us intentionality. So I have just probably the most important question that I'm going to ask ever on this show is, we have a 4.5-year-old. What did that teacher do to get those kids to sit down there quietly?
Whew, I wish I knew. That was the downside of, I basically had like a school I went to on Monday, and so saw them once a week. I know she had a couple of books. I will definitely say that. And I know Paige has a long list of books that she's tried in her classroom. I'm sure she could recommend some. I wish I had a more concrete answer though, but I know she knew every kid's name. I know that when she talked to them, she got down to face level and made sure that she wasn't even that difference of not appearing domineering, just knowing that. It was just really cool to watch. I wish I had more concrete information for you, but whatever she did, it worked well.
Such a powerful story. So speaking of stories, you mentioned that you came from Japan to Dallas. What happened then? How did you two meet and decide that Narwhals and Waterfalls was going to be a thing?
Well, as I mentioned, for the first 3 years here, I was teaching full-time at various daycares just all over the place. I had 5 different schools. I go to a different one each day of the week. And my wife happened to know Paige's husband and was like, "Hey, she's a music teacher. I know he's a music teacher as well. I know he's interested in writing some songs. You know, he's recycled some of the classics. He wants to start writing some more. I think she's doing the same thing. You guys should meet." And it was really that simple. She came over to our house one day, and we just immediately clicked, and she had a song she was working on. We sat down and walked away that day with a finished song. And from there, it just kind of grew and grew.
You know what's interesting about that is it sounds like it was just easy. And, you know, these days especially, so many things are just easy. And we call it flow when it just kind of happens. And it seems like, just from that story, that it's just natural. It's just easy. So what is up with Narwhals and Waterfalls? I think we all want to know where that title, where that name, that group name came from.
Well, in college, I actually decided to enter into a songwriting competition. So I quickly put a band together, and it consisted of a few friends, and they left the band name up to me. And the first thing I thought of was Narwhals and Waterfalls. I guess I don't know why that was the first thing that popped into my mind, but it sounded cute. We got second place in the songwriting competition. So, but our band actually dissipated almost as quickly as it started. So I locked that name away, and, for a rainy day. And when Adrien and I met, I ran the idea by him to use it for our band, and he liked it. So it seemed kind of perfect for an SEL children's band, like almost as if it was meant to be, because you've got narwhals they're rare, they're unique. And I recently read that narwhals don't thrive in captivity. In the 60s and 70s, there were attempts to capture narwhals, but they didn't survive. So narwhals are not meant to be contained, and neither should kids. They should be free to be themselves. And then the waterfall part is also perfect because every time, I don't know, like I love hiking, and every time I'm hiking and I like walk up to a waterfall, I'm just in awe of how mystical they are, beautiful, and just the fluidity of them in general. And so that's kind of how I like to teach kids to approach reflecting on who they are as people: mystical, beautiful, fluid, and equip them to accept all of those things as they, as the challenges and hardships of life kind of come at them. So it kind of, at first it was just a name that I thought was cute. And then as we went on, we saw more of the symbolism with it.
And the fact that it evolved, that it just happened naturally. And, that description, I think the most powerful thing that resonated with me the most was when you were talking about narwhals are not meant to be captive, and neither are kids, that they need space to explore, to tinker, to envision what their own musical education can be like. And when we try to put them in boxes, it doesn't go well.
No.
And that's where we see so many of the challenges in our educational system, is when we try to get our kids to fit into boxes that they don't want to be in. So I really appreciate that more than you know. And along with that, I know that having students and our children having ownership in their educational process is a critical point that you make through and through in your music. So can you talk a little bit about that, how you envision that students need to be involved in their own educational process?
Well, as Paige mentioned earlier, or as you guys were discussing earlier about teachers feeling a little bit timid about writing their own music and going down that route, it worked out that I started writing music when I was, I think, like 11 or 12, like way back when. And because of that, I felt the ability to try to improvise in the classroom with the kids as well. And so that was the first moment where, when you say, flap your wings like a bird, and you get three different kids doing three different kinds of birds, and you go, well, all those worked. Great. Or, goes all the way back to like Old MacDonald, where you can just pause and go, and on that farm, he had and you have that chance, and you have a kid say unicorn, and you have to roll with that. You have to be that waterfall and be fluid and just figure out what is going to happen next. And so beyond that part, though, having come from a songwriting background, I've also had the benefit of writing songs. Like I have guitar students, private guitar students, and I've had the chance to help them write songs as well. And so it's been really cool to be kind of a conduit. I view myself almost as a translator in many of these situations where they have something they need to say. I have the technical skills on the instruments and the guidance of this is how a melody can go. But again, if I try to put that in the box, I get in the way. And so I see ownership as that process of equipping the kids to see themselves, to create for themselves. And as we work through that, I give them the tools and the knowledge to accomplish that.
So I see that this manifests in one of your hits, the Mood Song, which I can't wait to hear. And can you give us a little background on this tune and where it came from and what it means to you?
I'll go first. So I wrote the Mood Song initially to be used in my classroom because I saw that the students needed a little bit more ownership of learning about how they feel and learning about their emotions. And I love a good song, a good like interactive song, kind of like what Adrien was talking about, like a song where they can feel a part of it. And so there's an aspect of the song where I sing, different emotions, and they have to raise their hands, or they can raise their hands at the emotion that they feel. And so I'm all about that like interaction piece. So that's kind of where it started. And then we created a video to go along with it. And maybe, yeah, Adrien could speak to that.
For sure. We, from the beginning, I guess this was back in late 2018 when we started putting together the music and the videos, and we knew that part of ownership in that musical process and in what you see, what you consume as music, is seeing yourself, like visually seeing yourself, not just emotionally, but actually seeing yourself on the screen. And so we did at that point what we thought was our best to represent as many different faces, as many different ages, even like races, genders, anything we could to have as many touch points as we could for different students. And it was actually one of the more enlightening and humbling experiences. We got a message, I guess this was in mid 2020, I believe. We know once everyone went remote, we saw obviously a lot more people using that video and the resources, and it was really cool to have some people comment and say, this has been really useful. This has been great. Thank you so much. And then we got a private message on Facebook from a teacher who said, I teach primarily Black and brown kids, and I love the song. When we were in person, I used to play it, but my kids don't see themselves in the video. They're not, I think she said, there's like 5 or 6 kids who look something like them, but that's about it. And I thought to myself, that can't be true. We tried so hard. And then I looked back and rewatched and was like, yeah, definitely has a point there. And so even taking ownership is taking ownership of the growth process. I don't look at it as a mistake. I look at it as a blind spot. And I'm grateful for that teacher for reaching out. So we did a whole new video where we tried our best to give that diversity on screen and give more kids the chance to own that video for themselves. And so that song in particular has been really cool, both to use in person, but also for Paige and I's growth as people trying to provide that ownership to our students.
And it's so easy to say, oh, no, we got it right. We had diversity. And, that's the space that, you said, the humility. It's saying, thank you. Thank you for letting us know. And we're on a path to make it right. And, I think this is one of the spaces that I think our teachers are afraid to sometimes dive into because they don't feel like they have the right words, or they're afraid that they're going to say something wrong. Well, there's a high probability that we are going to say something wrong, and that's okay as long as we realize that we can grow from that experience.
Yeah.
Powerful empowerment there to give us courage to take that step. So can we hear the mood song?
Yes, definitely. Hey, what's your mood today? I know sometimes it's hard to say. Hey, what's your mood today? Whatever you feel is alright. Some days I feel like a mountain so high, like I could be a superhero flying through the sky. But then other days like a valley so low, like nobody cares if I stay or go. Hey, what's your mood today? I know sometimes it's hard to say. Hey, what's your mood today? Whatever you feel is alright. Raise your hand if you're mad today. Raise your hand if you're sad today. Raise your hand if you're happy today. Whatever you feel is okay. Raise your hand if you're tired today. Raise your hand if you're excited today. Raise your hand if you're worried today. It's okay. Hey, what's your mood today? I know sometimes it's hard to say. Hey, hey, what's your mood today? Whatever you feel is alright.
So good. Oh my goodness. Paige, thank you.
I want
Thank
to
you.
say, I'm so glad I wasn't on mute for that.
You know, and if you were, it would have just been one heck of a dress rehearsal, and we would have gone in and we've been good. You know, we have all had some of those amidst this past year where we've been on mute. I was on mute for a good half an hour before a student told me that, hey, Edgar, you're on mute. Such a great tune and such an amazing voice. Thank you. Thank you. What a gift you've given us. What I love about that tune, and you know, it reminds me so much of the movie Inside Out, that you know, it starts out with joy being the epitome. We all want to be happy, and sadness kind of being the enemy. And as we progress through the movie, all emotions are normalized. That we realize that we need to feel all emotions, and they're all legit. Every, you know, one of my mantras is that every behavior makes sense. We just need to dive a little deeper to find out what is at the root of the behavior, what is at the root of the emotion, and how is that manifesting. And that song just hits it out of the park.
Thank you. And I just feel like in order for students to feel a sense of belonging and find their voice, they first have to be given space to explore how they feel, and understanding how they feel is not necessarily who they are as a person. Because first we need to accept the emotion and say, just because I'm angry today doesn't mean I'm an angry person, or just because I'm sad doesn't mean I'm a depressed person. And once we've actually accepted those emotions, then we can move past it and find the true voice and character of a person. And that's when we start to find belonging.
That is so critical, and thank you for bringing belonging in first. You know, we were talking before we started recording today that our typical path through SEL is starting with identity, and starting with identity as even emotional vocabulary building, which that song just nails. But when we see the students' hands raising across the classroom and saying, okay, so these are our happy students, these are our students who are tired, these are our students who are mad, angry, anxious, mischievous, any of these robust emotional words, well, that's a level of vulnerability that you need to have for belonging, that we need to be able to come together and have any music making. And trust me, if I were in that class hearing that tune, my hands would be good. And you know, I could see my hand going up like for half of them. You know, it's not just one. And the freedom of that song. And we know the power of movement. We know that our students need to move, 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 move. And that song has all of it.
Yeah, and I think it also works as a really good check-in tool, like you said, for the teachers to know at the beginning of class which students are feeling what, and kind of, what they're gonna, where they're coming from when they walk into your classroom, because every student is coming from a different home, a different, you know, experience that day. And so being able to check in at the beginning of class is really helpful. And this offers a musical, artful way to do so.
So, question. I want you to think back to the first time that you did that song with your kiddos. Okay? Was there apprehension? Was there I'm going to use a big educational word here, but was there scaffolding that you had to do to get students to say, oh, here's this word, here's how it works in my life, here's what that means to me? Or were they just jumping out of their skin on day one?
Well, when I introduced it, I had already been doing a feelings check-in with my students. Like as they walked in from the hallway, I would stand in the doorway with a feelings chart and have them like point to the emoji that they felt. So they were kind of used to that language of emotion in my classroom. But kids are so open about emotions, and if you ask, you might get more than you even like thought you would get. And especially if you build that relationship with the kids, they're eager to tell you anything and everything about how they're feeling and what their dog did last night, or what their aunt's going to make them for dinner, or so in my experience, they absolutely like loved the engagement aspect of it, and they would raise their hands. I mean, you have a couple of students who feel timid. And of course, this song isn't meant to force students to participate or to raise their hands, because that doesn't give them agency. And that's also an important aspect of the music making process too. So yeah, that's my experience with the song.
Absolutely. And just a powerful space. You know, one thing that really struck me as you were talking is just because I'm angry doesn't mean that I'm an angry person, and that we have so many feelings as we go through our day, our life, our minutes. And sort of exploring of this identity piece, which again, we're going out of order, and that's okay because humans are messy. Humans are all about, who said that we have to do belonging after we do identity? Well, I believe that self-reflection comes first, but through that belonging song, we heard so much about self-reflection. But that doesn't mean that we're going to ignore our identity, and I think that we have a really great tune that gets at that identity piece. So Adrien, can we talk a little bit about I'm Always Me?
I mean, it plays perfectly off of what we've been talking about. One of the most important things I read in one of the various books I explored about SEL was that sometimes kids just need to be reminded that how they're feeling right now is not always going to be how they feel. I think we take that for granted a lot, especially I work primarily with like young kids, like 7 and below. And it's interesting to see, like, if they feel a certain way, there's no, okay, well, last week I also felt this way, so maybe I can approach this from a more, that process isn't happening. There's that overwhelm. And so that identity, and especially, unfortunately, there are classrooms where there are kids who are labeled as the bad kid or the loud kid. I was always the quiet kid growing up, pretty naturally introverted, but I was always the quiet kid, so they didn't expect me to say anything or raise my hand and all of that. And so I wrote this song because, I mean, at this point in my life, like I said, I was the guy in front of a camp of 80 kids and 20 staff going crazy and having pies thrown in my face. And I was also the guy who was soft-spoken on the weekend and wanted to stay home and read a book. And so knowing that kids have that same range of feeling and need to be reminded that, if I'm mad today, I'm not an angry kid. I'm feeling emotions right now and I can process that and be happy tomorrow. I can be happy in an hour, maybe. And so I wrote this song, I'm Always Me, from my own experience, but also as a way to say to, a 3-year-old kid who's feeling a certain way, like, hey, whatever you're going through right now, whatever you're feeling, whatever you want to do right now, if you want to jump up and do a dance move and you're usually not that guy, go for it. You're always you. And that's fine.
Can we hear it?
We can do that.
Fantastic.
Got my pick. Sometimes I'm glad, and I smile from ear to ear. Sometimes I'm mad, and I stomp for all to hear. And sometimes I'm just so sleepy I could fall asleep standing right here. Sometimes I'm quiet, I don't want to be anywhere. Sometimes I'm loud, I just have so much to share. Sometimes I'm proud of myself and I want the whole world to know. Now I know this might sound crazy or just hard to believe, but whether I'm glad or whether I'm mad or whether I'm quiet or whether I'm loud, it doesn't matter because I'm always me.
So many thoughts right now, Adrien. Just incredible. Incredible. And you know what I'm struck by? That obviously that tune gets at everything we were just talking about. But how many musical things can we teach through that tune? As I'm listening to that, I'm thinking dynamics, I'm thinking inflection, I'm thinking phrasing, I'm thinking emotional connection to a phrase. It's so many different ways to engage with that tune that for a music teacher saying, well, yeah, but how do I wrap this into a musical concept? Folks, right there, nails it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As I heard that and I was listening, I was just kind of getting into the groove too. One thing that I firmly believe that as we start to explore this area of family music or children's music or whatever we're referring to that genre as, that it needs to be something that is catchy and appealing to teachers and parents too. And home run. All of your music is just something that I would listen to and that I would actually feel comfortable putting in front of my college kids. I think there's a timeless element to the music and the message. And I think that's just a testament to the great work. We know that right now we are just in a very amped up time. That, we talk about up emotions, we talk about down emotions, and then within those emotions, we talk about severity of emotions. Is this just an incredibly intense emotion, or is it a mild emotion? And I think that both of the tunes that we've already heard really start to unpack that. But I think that a big thing that we need to explore right now is de-escalation. How do we lower the temperature? How do we bring it down to a space that we can have some of these dialogues in a way that are going to be productive and we're not in this amped up state where it is always just conflict or bust, that we can come down and we can listen and we can speak. And I know that, let's just face it, SEL's a buzzword. Another buzzword is mindfulness. Mindfulness is all over the place. And I guarantee you that's what that teacher was doing with those 2.5-year-olds. It was all about mindful breathing. It was all about centering in a way that was digestible for that 2.5-year-old. But I know you have one more tune to share with us today, and it's the breathing song. So Paige, can you talk to us a little bit about this and how we feel that this kind of brings it all together with this idea of agency? How can our students really have a voice in our class?
Yeah, so actually the story about this song is I actually emailed the social emotional learning director in my school district, and I asked her, if we were to create any song for social emotional learning, what topic would it be about? And she immediately wrote me back and was like really excited, but sent me this chart of breathing techniques. And they were animal breaths for elementary students that included the crocodile breath and the butterfly breath, pufferfish, and dolphin. And so I was definitely up for the challenge, and I decided I was going to go ahead and write that song for her and for all the, for it to be a resource in our school district, really. And so, agency is all about giving students voice and giving them tools so that they can then choose from that toolbox on what they, what's going to be helpful for them in that moment. And so a couple of things, like you mentioned, are in that toolbox of self-regulation, like breathing techniques, mindfulness, meditations. I like to teach my students the hand model of the brain from Dan Siegel. That helps them de-escalate as well. So that's another tool in the toolbox. So the cool part about this song is it's all about breathing, but it's about giving them agency on which tool to use. So the song includes 4 different breaths, and they're just really fun for kids because it is really hard sometimes to get students to sit for a long amount of time. And I love using this song as a way to incorporate mindfulness for energetic students, as like maybe a brain break in the middle of class. And I've also used it as as a tool for improvisation. I might ask them, what kind of animal breath do you want to do? And they might be like, I want to do a puppy breath, or, whatever other animals they can think of. So.
Paige, perfect. And I know that you mentioned that, especially during this last year, that teachers have just been clamoring for online resources. So thank you so much for being willing to share this video with us. Let's cue this video. Here we go.
Do you ever feel mad or afraid and you wanna say something mean? I'm gonna show you something that you can try. All you gotta do is breathe like a butterfly. Open your wings like a butterfly. Close your wings like a crocodile. Open your jaw like a crocodile. Close your jaw. Do you ever feel sad or upset and you wanna hurt someone? Instead of doing that, listen to me. All you gotta do is breathe like a dolphin. Jump out of the sea like a dolphin. Dive into the sea like a puffer fish. Tummy puffs out like a puffer fish. Tummy sinks down. Now that we know what to do when you're feeling sad or upset, let's try them all together now and find the one that we like best. Like a butterfly, open your wings like a butterfly. Close your wings like a crocodile. Open your jaw like a crocodile. Close your jaw like a dolphin. Jump out of the sea like a dolphin. Dive into the sea like a puffer fish. Tummy puffs out like a puffer fish. Tummy sinks down. Now that we have our favorite way of breathing, let's practice them together. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale.
What a fantastic song. I love the creativity. I love that the students are engaged. I love that the students have choice. And as we've talked about so many times, it's all about amplifying the student's voice and giving them choice. What a special treat that we've been able to have some tangible examples of what this looks like, especially for our youngest of students. So with that being said, friends, it's such a gift that you've given this series, our teachers, and the profession. So with this, any last thoughts, Paige?
Yeah. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for having us on the podcast. We are so grateful to have this opportunity to share our music with everyone. We created it for our students, but also to share with other music teachers. And honestly, music is, there's no better class than music to incorporate SEL. That's truly how I feel, because music has a natural way of promoting belonging and community acceptance. It's a space where we can be ourselves, no matter how strange, no matter how out of the box we are, no matter what kind of feelings we're bringing into it. I have a story about just middle school in general. A lot of my friends describe middle school as the worst years of their life. But I look back and a lot of people do, but I look back and remember middle school as being magical, because that's honestly when I found a place that I belonged, which was choir. And I found my people who sang whatever they were thinking, people who thought my silly dance moves were hilarious, and people who just accepted me for who I was. I wanted to be there all the time. I wanted to be in the choir room. I wanted to see my friends there. I wanted to tell my music teacher, what was going on with me. And I just think that's a great way, a great like story to share, because music is at the heart of belonging. And I feel like music is just one of the best places that you can, feel accepted. So I just feel honored to offer some songs that music teachers can use in their classroom and help them facilitate that.
You found your people in middle school. I feel like I'm with my people here. This is so powerful. This is like-minded, like-hearted. And we know that the people who are watching this show are wanting these resources because they want to do this work and to help their students to find their people. And as you said, music is at the heart of belonging. That quote's going to be with me for a really long time. Thank you so much. Adrien, last thoughts.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I taught in Japan for a while, and I had an American guy who moved there when he was 25, who was my Japanese teacher. He's completely fluent, and because of that, I got to get some really cool cultural insights. And one of the words he taught me is this concept of ma. It's a really complicated kanji, but vocally it's just ma. And what it represents is this concept over there, that if there are two individuals interacting, that there's a space in the middle where anything can happen. And rather than it being my identity and your identity, butting heads or seeing if we work together, that in any interaction, there's this space in the middle where you offer something and they offer something, and you create something that happens right then in that moment and may never happen again. And, when you're in a different culture like I knew very, very obviously that there were things I was missing. There were cultural cues I wasn't understanding. Literally the language itself, oftentimes I wouldn't understand. It was great to ask a kid how they were feeling, but if I didn't understand their answer literally, I had to try whatever else I could to figure out what they were offering into that space in the middle. And I feel like that is one of the biggest concepts I brought back to teaching here. And that these songs offer that space in the middle where you're not dictating to the kids, you're not telling them do this or that. There's a space in the middle, which is inherently chaotic. It's inherently unstable in many ways. You don't know. If you offer that space and say, raise your hand if you're tired today, you don't know what that kid's going to put in that space. But I like approaching my role as a teacher, as a guitar teacher, helping a kid write a song, that my job is simply to hold that space and make sure that I'm hearing what they're putting in that space so that I'm interacting with that and not what I think they should do or not what, my previous perceptions of them, but to be right there in that space and interact with this very unique moment. And I think as Paige was talking about with choir, I think that's what music is in that space. The right song that you and a friend, you don't have to talk. Both of you can put that same song in a space and go, you too? Awesome. And that's your interaction. That's what you hold for each other. And then you go about your business. And I love that we have the opportunity to offer that, not just through music, but music obviously being one of the most powerful ways to just connect and know that you're communicating the same thing to each other and feeling the same thing and just appreciating that moment, no matter how brief it is.
Adrien, as powerful as it comes, you describe that space as chaos, and we're afraid of that chaos. We're afraid to get into the mess. We're afraid to honor that. We feel like we constantly have to jabber to fill silence, and that space between people is, I think, so much wisdom there, so much wisdom in how we can move forward. Paige, Adrien, Narwhals and Waterfalls, friends, know that you are going to have these 3 tunes and many, many more be in classrooms across the country. You are making a difference, and thank you so much for giving us a portal to discuss social and emotional learning in a way that is just supremely musical and supremely digestible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Be safe and be well. And until our paths cross again, thank you so much.
Bye.
You too.
Bye-bye. Music for All's mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through Music for All. Our vision is to be a catalyst to ensure that every child across America has access and opportunity to participate in active music making in their scholastic environment. I want to thank Narwhals and Waterfalls for their amazing musicianship. They brought music to the series. What a gift. But they also showed us the heart of music and how we can use a simple message to tell big stories and delve deeply into the challenges that we're exploring. I'd like to thank our national presenting sponsor, the Yamaha Corporation of America. Please be sure to check out the Yamaha Educator Suite at yamahaeducatorsuite.com. And I would like to thank GIA Publications for their continued support. Before we say goodnight, it is important that you understand that now more than ever, these uncertain times continue to impact Music for All, and we are extremely grateful for any donations gifted to our nonprofit organization. If you enjoyed our program today, and in order to help us to continue to provide our free educational resources and advocacy materials, please consider gifting to Music for All at any amount. Your gift allows us to serve our mission with future educational programming such as this webinar. Please visit musicforall.org/give. For Music for All, I'm Scott Edgar. Thank you.